Welcome back to the GC channel. I'm your host, Orlando Casares, the president and founder of First Law International. If you're new with us, welcome. This is a channel especially for you, for the GCs and for in-house legal teams, and is powered by General Counsels. We'll be covering today some of the trendiest topics, things that keep you up at night, and we hope that you will find the next few minutes invaluable and very insightful. So follow us along. It's interesting that when you distill 30 years of experience, and there's a value to that. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. That's why it's taking 30 years. And as I'm listening to you take us on this journey about, bridging the cultural divide, being able to hire and mentor and develop successful in-house legal teams, talking about your acumen to business and have a business nose approach to the legal area and trying to find and optimize ways through. It really almost points to what I said earlier about your skill set, which is rare. And so it's really coming down to leadership. There is something about, the way you've addressed the legal profession that points to a very rare skill set of leadership. So how would you describe your leadership style? Because before you answer that, of all the global clients that FLI has, I have to put you in a very small category of those who have been very effective managing the external counsel. But I won't preface that by telling you why I think that. So tell me, in your mind, what is your leadership style that makes external counsel work for you on the weekends, during holidays, late at night, and are happy to do it?
I think it's relatively simple, Orlando. And maybe I will go back in time, to a time in maybe the 70s when I was studying, or the 80s, end of the 80s when I started working, where for some reason people were often more directive with each other. I think that simple notions of respect to one another in conversations, of humility, of clear communication, from time to time, we're not that common. There was still also a feeling, especially when you started working at that time, that senior leadership was somewhat isolated, living in their own bubble, and you were starting your career. It was difficult to get information as a young lawyer. Why would someone be bothered by a young lawyer working on a contract? Doesn't a contract belong to legal? Well, no, not at all. A contract belongs to the business person who sends you the contract for review. Ultimately, they will sign it. They have the authority and the delegation of power to sign that contract. So they should know what's in the contract. They should own the language. Now, we may help on the language. We may also help from time to time on having people understand, what the liability clause means, or what really other, types of considerations in the contract, which are not purely commercial, mean. But I would give you to consider that, from a purely legal point of view, what in a contract is really legal? The force majeure clause, maybe. And even then, over the last, year and a half, I've got to learn that everyone is talking force majeure with the pandemic we just had, especially in a manufacturing environment. So it seems that, everyone now knows what's in that specific clause. So a contract belongs to the person who initiates the contract, who owns the contract. Maybe again, 30, 40 years ago, that was not always the same. And there was this categorization of work and more this silo working, and there would be an attitude maybe more often than not. I think you actually still see this in certain environments, in certain cultures. I have worked in so many different countries that you will have no surprise that in certain countries, if you want to get something done, well, the person on top needs to have this, tough voice and really needs to be very clear about what he wants. What do you stimulate in our more, polished environment that I'm alluding to right now, well, a person addressed with a tough voice will automatically consider that maybe his contribution is not praised for, is not welcome. That somewhere he just needs to do the work and nothing more than that. So I think we've moved a long way from decades ago on many different topics, including this one. Organization, again, this goes back to human capital, need to have a certain values or principles in their on their horizon and apply it on a daily basis. That go back to respect, that go back to humility, that goes back to the right way of communicating.
Anecdotally, just having watched you in meetings, and you just said it a minute ago, there is an air about you where you're treating external counsel with a degree of respect and dignity because you understand that they are there to provide you a service. But it's more than they're a commodity that you're paying for their time. You try to establish a human connection to the external counsel. And I've heard that from the very members of our global community that are working for you and your team. Is that a natural Vincent global European value, or is that something that you develop over 30 years of being a leader and a mentor to others?
I think to address your question here, what I talked about previously of, we are much more geared by respect and humility. I have certainly gone, through a period where this was not natural to me. However, I think we all have successes, but also relative disappointments from time to time on, certain things that we are working on, or, maybe certain, aspects of life in general, maybe because we found ourselves, unfortunately, one day on the receiving end or on the giving end of maybe too harsh criticism or, way of communicating that was absolutely not necessary. I'm far from being perfect. If I'm behind the wheel and, someone doesn't go fast enough, I can unfortunately lose a little bit my patience. Or from time to time, my team will, always point out to the relative rare exception when they know by looking at me that I'm bothered by something. And generally, it might be better to wait 1 hour before talking to me. It's simply because I'm in my thoughts and I want to find a resolution to something, and it's maybe not the right time to kind of interrupt me. But this type of behavior, going back to, respectful behaviors with your team, obviously also need to apply to any other stakeholders in your organization or contributing to your organization. In your case, also towards outside counsel. I mean, human beings will always do better when you are geared by a very simple reflection of win-win relationships. What is it all about? And, maybe that also is or has been learned through badly negotiated contracts where you figure out a few years down the road that, the other party really got you bad on that contract. Why? Because you were not prepared, or there was a deadline. Remember the word deadline and what I think about it, a self-imposed kind of restriction on doing more and better to have a better contract was not available because at that time we had to act fast. And then several years later, you understand that that contract was not at all about win-win. So what do you think then? I'm not going to deal with those people anymore, or I'm going to get them, my turn to get them. Now, with outside counsel, it's actually the same. What do we want as, in-house counsel? Obviously, we have different providers that we can turn to. Long gone the time where you had a single type of law firm, legal provider. You were going to a law firm. You knew that you would go to a partner and associates who would get to work on your specific problem. Nowadays, you can go on Google, if you have the time to do that, and find probably a lot of answers about things in certain jurisdictions that you would never have found 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, where you had to go to a law firm. You will want to go to a certain type of law firm for certain transactions, but not for others. All that will be geared by consideration of cost, quality, rapidity in delivery, because at times, indeed, being fast is the requirement. But what will you always want to have in that, new or existing relationship is a win-win situation. The law firm understanding that the corporate client is, not the cow to milk. Our resources are limited, like in every other corporate world. Now, if a law firm doesn't understand that, someone in manufacturing is certainly looking much more after the pennies than, in the dot-com area, you've got some very large corporations that have doubled or tripled their size over the last year and a half. Well, that's not been the case in many other areas. Therefore, money counts, quality of service counts. If you all want this to meet somewhere, you need to have good communication. You need to have your lawyer who is interested in servicing your company. Therefore, if you open your doors, if you say who you are, what you're doing, and if you spend a bit more time than just talking about the legal problem at hand, you will certainly develop a much better understanding and an ability to say, well, yes, next time I will actually again listen to this person who last time asked me to do some work quite quickly, but did it in a way that sounded, interesting, with giving me all the information I needed and rewarding me for my work, even if it doesn't mean financially, it means by coming back for further work.
Well, thank you for watching. If you would like to see more videos like this one, subscribe to the channel and press the notification button below so that you will be alerted when new videos come out. We hope that you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to the next one. And don't forget, you heard it here first.